I returned from London after 8 long years, carrying only one wish in my heart: to surprise my son Aaron and to hold my 5-year-old grandson, little Jalen, for the very first time, right inside the beautiful home in Decatur, Georgia, the home I had bought for my son before I left. But the moment I quietly unlocked the door with my old key, a sharp, icy shout shot out from the kitchen, freezing me right on the threshold. "Wash those dishes faster! You still have to scrub the upstairs toilet tonight!" I stood paralyzed. Through the kitchen doorway, I saw Aaron kneeling on the floor, picking up shards of a broken bowl with trembling hands. My son, the boy who used to smile through his whole childhood, was now wearing a torn, shabby apron with a black marker phrase scrawled across it: "Hamilton Family Property." They dared to treat my child like this? They thought I would stand by and watch? No. They were about to learn exactly who they were dealing with. My name is Lorna Bennett, and this is the story of the day I was forced to rise up and protect my son. Before I tell you about this powerful journey of family and justice, leave a comment below and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I'm genuinely curious. Whether you're hearing this over your morning coffee or unwinding at the end of your day. And if you're ready, come with me to the next part. This story is only just beginning. 8 years working in London in the elder care industry were truly years paid for with sweat and sleepless nights. I had tended to every difficult elderly client, survived exhausting overnight shifts, and saved every single pound I could. All for one moment, the day I would return home, see Aaron in the flesh, and finally meet my grandson, little 5-year-old Jalen. As the Uber rolled through the familiar streets of Decatur, Georgia, my heart tightened. Everything looked exactly as I remembered: red brick houses, white picket fences, towering oak trees draped in Spanish moss, swaying in the afternoon breeze. And then the house appeared, the craftsman-style home I had bought for Aaron before leaving for London, the gift I saved for penny by penny, so my son would always have a safe place to call home. I stood on the sidewalk, my hands trembling slightly as I pulled out the old key. Aaron had no idea I was returning. This was supposed to be the biggest surprise of his life. The front door unlocked quietly. I stepped inside, mouth already prepared to release a joyful "surprise!" But the word died in my throat when a man's voice shot out from the living room, so sharp and cold that I held my breath. "Clean that mess up faster, or you'll get another beating tonight." My blood seemed to thicken in my veins. Through the hallway, I saw Aaron kneeling in the middle of the hardwood floor, scrubbing vomit stains with trembling hands. My son wore a filthy, torn apron, and on it was a phrase that made my stomach twist: "Hamilton Family Property." My son, labeled like an object they owned. I hadn't even gathered my voice when suddenly Huxley, Aaron's husband, completely changed his demeanor. His face shifted from cruel rage to a bright, theatrical smile, and he walked toward me with outstretched arms. "Mom, welcome home!" Huxley said loudly, his warmth so fake it raised every hair on my body. "What a wonderful surprise! Aaron was just helping with a bit of housework. You know him. He's always eager to pitch in." Aaron instantly shot to his feet, yanked off that humiliating apron, and stuffed it behind the sofa cushion, as if hiding it could erase the reality I had just witnessed. His movements were quick, panicked, desperate. "Mom." Aaron forced a smile, but his eyes were tired, hollow. "I'm okay, just a little worn out." A small figure slowly peeked out from behind Aaron's leg. Jalen. My grandson, seeing me in person for the very first time. His round brown eyes widened, curious yet frightened. "Mommy," he whispered, "who is that man?" The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Years of video calls, and still he couldn't recognize me. In his eyes, I was a stranger in his home. I lowered myself to his eye level, trying to keep my voice gentle, even as my heart twisted. "Hey, sweetheart. Grandpa here. Lorna. You remember me from our video calls, right? I had to work far away. But now I'm home. I came to see you and your daddy." Jalen flinched, burying his face into Aaron's leg. As if hiding from danger, Aaron placed a hand on the boy's head to soothe him. And in that moment, I saw it. A dark bruise wrapped around Aaron's arm. "Aaron, I began, but he quickly tugged his sleeve down and shook his head, eyes pleading, "Not now." Huxley patted my shoulder, still smiling, though his eyes were as cold as steel. "He's been a little clumsy lately," he said with a dry chuckle. "You know how men are, always bumping into things." In that instant, I stood in the very house I had once believed was a place of safety and love for my son. Yet it felt like I had wandered into a perfectly staged theater of lies. Every tiny detail, Aaron's fearful eyes, Jalen's anxious face, Huxley's flawless performance, screamed that something terrible was being hidden. And if a mother couldn't see it, who would? Aaron, the confident, strong young man I left behind 8 years ago, now looked like someone broken, and Jalen, my grandson, who should have run into my arms, instead clung to his father as if I were a threat. In that moment, one thought cut through everything that should have been a joyful reunion. I had to find out what was happening to my family. And my mother's intuition whispered one truth louder than anything else. The reality was far worse than what I had just seen. 3 hours later, I finally had my chance. Huxley had gone out to meet what he called a business partner, though the heavy smell of whiskey on his shirt told a very different story. Jalen was down for his afternoon nap, and the entire house felt lighter, as if even the air itself exhaled when he wasn't around. Aaron sat motionless at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. In the soft afternoon light, the bruises showed even more clearly, not only on his arms, but deep around his wrists, as if someone had grabbed, squeezed, and twisted. I pulled out a chair and kept my voice gentle. "Aaron," I said, "tell me about those bruises. Don't tell me you're clumsy. I raised you. You were the fastest kid in the neighborhood, and you never once fell." He flinched, instinctively wrapping an arm around himself as if trying to hide everything. "It's nothing, Dad. Just work accidents. Konchi lamvivik nang fusua sang nyakua." His voice trembled. His eyes darted away. This wasn't the confident, strong Aaron who used to argue politics at Sunday dinners. This was someone broken. I took his hands in mine, my voice dropping low, the voice of a father that had lived inside me all these years. "Aaron, Michael Bennett, do you remember what I told you the day you were born? I said I would protect you, and that promise has never expired." The fragile wall he had built in silence shattered instantly. His face crumpled, tears falling onto the kitchen table. His whole body shook, like he had turned back into a frightened child seeking safety in his parents' arms. "Oh, Daddy," he choked, calling me by the name from his childhood. "I messed up so bad. After Jalen was born, I got sick. Really sick. Up here." He tapped his temple. "The doctor called it postpartum depression. Kange kan kumrakhaizung noi. Kum chum Jalen duk. Jed and Huxley noi se lo mai tu chum luk kan hoi fuk." He paused for breath, then spoke so softly it sounded like he feared his own voice. "I was on heavy medication moi tu deu moho. Kan kum ni noi. Ha ducha kan zeto bao la je bao him. Je wi quien ite. Va kan ki het. Kan tin ha." My heart clenched as I watched my son relive that nightmare. I asked, my voice barely steady, "What papers, exactly?" "Property transfer documents. Power of attorney forms," Aaron whispered. "They said it was only temporary until I got better. But when I finally cleared my head and understood what I had signed..." He looked around the kitchen, a kitchen that should have belonged to him. "They said I had signed the house over to them, that I'm now a live-in caregiver, and I have to work to repay their family for helping me." A wave of anger surged through me, the kind only a parent aware their child has been preyed upon could understand. "And if you don't? If you leave?" I asked, though my voice no longer felt like my own. "They said they'd prove I was unfit and take Jalen away." His voice broke into pieces. "So I stayed. 3 years, Daddy. 3 years I've lived like a servant, in my own home." Aaron stood up, opened a kitchen drawer, and took out a thick manila folder. "I kept everything. Medical records, the papers I signed, everything. Kon July. Vi kon hiva mot ngay now da. Seka I jip kon hiu trinzi. Tatsuda seira." I opened the folder, each page cut into me like a blade. And right then, a thought rang in my mind as clear as a church bell. The Huxley Hamilton family made the biggest mistake of their lives when they decided to provoke the family of Lorna Bennett. There are moments in life when truth doesn't just hurt us, it wakes us. Sitting in that kitchen, watching my son tremble like someone who had crawled out of a psychological hell, I knew. This story wasn't merely about abuse. It was about betrayal by the very people we were taught to trust. And once a mother has seen the truth, she will never close her eyes again. That night, when the entire house had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the living room. No lights on, only the moonlight slipping through the window, scattering pale streaks across the wooden floor like fragments of old memories. From upstairs, I could hear Aaron scrubbing the toilet. It was already 11 p.m., and my son was still working. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Aaron kneeling on the floor, that humiliating apron, that look of fear and shame when he saw me, returned as vividly as if it had just happened. 8 years. I had let my child suffer this for 8 years without knowing memories surged back, layer by layer, like waves crashing against the shore, each one heavier than the last. 8 years ago, the day I decided to leave Aaron sat at the kitchen table, head bowed, a copy of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in front of him, job listings scribbled over with frantic underlines. "Dad, I've applied to 47 positions, not a single one called back." My son, 28, talented, hardworking. But the job market was collapsing in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis. The house was drowning in debt. The bills felt like stones on our chests. The fridge was nearly empty. "Son," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I have a job opportunity in London, good pay. If I go, at least things will ease up for you." "No, Dad," Aaron cried. "Don't leave me alone. I'll keep trying." But I knew what I had to do. A parent always knows when it's time to sacrifice. "This is temporary, son. When you're stable, I'll come back. I promise." The next day, I flew out. Through the glass at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, I saw Aaron standing past security, tears streaming down his face. He waved. I waved back. I had no idea. That would be the last time I saw my son truly smile for many years. Some stories, when we look back on them, reveal little signs in every detail, signs we never recognized at the time, but once it's too late, we realize they had been warnings all along. That was exactly how I felt that night, as if God had been knocking for 8 years, and I never opened the door. 3 years ago, Aaron's wedding, via video call. "Dad, look at my suit!" Aaron spun his phone to show me a sleek gray vest. Behind him, the backyard of the Decatur house had been beautifully arranged for a small wedding. A woman stepped into the frame. Long black hair, beautiful face, radiant smile. "Hi, Mr. Bennett. I'm Sienna. I'll take good care of Aaron, I promise." "Thank you, dear," I replied, as tears rolled down my cheeks. "You're the best thing to happen to this family." I believed that. I believed Sienna was a blessing sent to my son. But looking back, everything had been wrong from the start. In the video calls that followed, Aaron spoke less and less. He always repeated the same phrase. "I'm fine, Dad." But his eyes were distant, his voice tired. Was he asking for help and I didn't see it? Was I so focused on earning money that I forgot to really look into my child's eyes? Now, in this darkened house, I heard Aaron's footsteps coming down the stairs. He probably thought I was asleep. He opened the fridge, took out a container of leftover food, and sat at the kitchen table eating in the dark, without turning on the light, as if he didn't deserve to sit in the brightness. I looked at my son, his hunched shoulders, the tremble in his hands as he held his fork, his curled posture like someone surviving on borrowed breath. Aaron was no longer himself. He looked like a shadow, a spirit drained empty. And that night, I understood something with absolute clarity. This was not just about reclaiming a house. This was about reclaiming my son's soul. And I would do whatever it took to bring it back. 4:45 a.m., when darkness hasn't lifted yet. I woke not because I wanted to, but because 8 years of night shifts in London had trained my body too well. But this morning, what pulled me out of sleep wasn't an alarm. It was the faintest sound of footsteps on the upstairs wooden floor. Aaron getting out of bed. I lay on the living room sofa, eyes wide open in the dark. Streetlights from Decatur Square streamed through the window, carving soft yellow stripes onto the hardwood floor. The home I had bought with sweat and sacrifice suddenly felt foreign, as if hiding something deeply sinister. The faucet turned on, the fridge door closed. A pan was set down with exaggerated care on the stove. Everything was so quiet, unnaturally quiet, as if Aaron was trying to do everything without being noticed, or more accurately, without making anyone angry. I sat up, folded the thin blanket, and crept to the stair landing. The perfect spot to see the kitchen without being seen. I needed to witness, with my own eyes, the truth my son had hidden for 3 long years. 5 a.m. Aaron and the ritual of fear. The kitchen light clicked on, and I saw him clearly. Aaron wore an old faded t-shirt, the kind people use for heavy labor or when they want to be invisible. He moved like a shadow, shoulders hunched, head down, each step careful, calculated, as if the floor were lined with landmines. His face was gaunt, dark circles smudged under his eyes like ink stains, his skin pale, his cheeks hollowed. But what shattered me was his expression, empty, resigned, as if he had accepted there was no way out for him. Aaron opened the fridge with such careful movements it looked like he was asking permission. He took out a bag of Ethiopian Yirgacheffe organic coffee from Whole Foods, the kind he never bought for himself. He always preferred cheap, simple coffee. So whose coffee was it? I already knew the answer, before he even began brewing. 5:10 a.m., the coffee ritual of a servant. Aaron poured beans into the grinder, lips moving as he counted. 1, 2, 3 tablespoons. Exactly 3. Not 2.5. Not 3.5. Exactly 3. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, a smell that should have meant a peaceful morning. But on Aaron's face was only tension. He brewed it using a French press, heated the water to exactly 200 degrees Fahrenheit, checking with a thermometer as if he were conducting a lab experiment. While waiting for the coffee to steep, Aaron opened the pantry, scooped brown sugar. Each spoon leveled perfectly with the back of a knife. 1, 2, 3. 3 spoons into a white porcelain mug. Then he wiped the rim meticulously until not a single drop remained. From the stairs, I watched my son make a cup of coffee like he was preparing life-saving medicine. And I understood. This wasn't about coffee. This was survival. If the coffee wasn't perfect, Aaron would be the one to suffer. Harsh words, cold stares, or an entire day treated like trash. My son had learned one thing. Perfection was the only way to lessen the pain. 5:25 a.m. 4 breakfasts, 4 levels of contempt. After the coffee, Aaron began the real work. Breakfast, not one breakfast. 4, each one a custom order. Breakfast number 1, for Jalen whole grain bread, organic eggs, good cheese, grass-fed butter. He assembled the sandwich with jeweler-like precision. The butter evenly spread, the egg placed perfectly, the cheese melted just right, then cut diagonally into 2 exact triangles served on a Mickey Mouse plate with strawberry slices shaped into hearts. I saw the love in every movement. This was the only way a father deprived of his voice could show love. Through food, breakfast number 2. For Monica. Omega-3 eggs, tender asparagus, English muffin, Canadian bacon, hollandaise sauce. She wanted asparagus roasted exactly 4 minutes, and the poached egg to have the perfectly runny center. Aaron checked time, temperature, texture, shook his head, tossed the egg. Again and again. Only on the 4th attempt did he dare plate it. I knew Monica would later check the fridge, notice the missing eggs, and use it as another excuse to scold him for wasting things. Breakfast number 3, for Reggie steel-cut oats, cooked for 30 minutes, almond milk, organic blueberries, honey. Aaron stood over the pot, stirring continuously, sweat beading on his forehead. Not from heat, but from fear. Breakfast number 4, for Sienna Greek yogurt with honey, almond slices, and homemade granola. But this morning, Aaron discovered the granola was gone. His face went pale. He checked every shelf. Nothing. He had forgotten to buy it. He froze for a few seconds, then added extra almonds, praying she wouldn't notice. But I knew, and he knew. Sienna always noticed. Sienna always found something wrong. A reminder. You will never be good enough. From the stairs, seeing all this, I realized these weren't preferences. This was a system, a ritual designed to remind Aaron, you exist only to serve. If you think this is just about coffee or breakfast or picky people, wait until you see how they teach a 5-year-old child to look down on his own father. What follows isn't just abuse, it's an entire curriculum of cruelty. 5:45 a.m. The little details of horror. While waiting for the food, Aaron cleaned, not like a normal person cleans, but like someone terrified of making a single mistake. He wiped the granite countertop 3 times, each with a different cloth, then tilted his head to check under the light for streaks. He rearranged the fridge. Labels turned outward. Taller containers in the back, shorter in front, milk on the left, juice on the right. The dining table, chairs at exact angles, napkins folded into triangles, knives and forks in perfect alignment. I remembered the fridge 8 years ago. Messy, chaotic, normal. Now it looked like a showroom display, so spotless it felt inhuman. For Aaron, cleaning was no longer work. It was the only ticket he had, to be allowed to exist in his own home. 6 a.m. The scar. Aaron turned to wipe the fridge door. His shirt lifted slightly, and I saw it. A long red-pink scar running from his lower back nearly up to his ribs. Not an old scar, not a fall, a mark made by an object. A belt, perhaps, or something long and sharp. Who had dared lay a hand on my son? Every instinct in me screamed to run downstairs, hold him, ask everything, drag him away from this place immediately. But I bit down hard. Not yet. I needed to see everything, understand everything. But in that moment, something inside me clicked. This wasn't just about taking back the house. Someone had put their hands on my child, and I would make them pay. 6:15 a.m. Sienna comes down. The performance begins. The sharp click of heels echoed on the stairs, each step a declaration of power. Sienna appeared in a fitted black suit, lightly curled hair, flawless makeup, carrying an expensive bag, and wearing a luxury watch, the image of a successful attorney at the top of her career. But in her eyes was something ice cold, something I recognized instantly: cruelty. She entered the kitchen like a queen entering her throne room. No glance at Aaron, no greeting, just sat, opened her phone. Aaron immediately set the coffee in front of her. Your coffee with exactly 3 sugars. Sienna didn't reply. She took a sip, faintly grimaced. Erin's entire body tightened. "Why doesn't my yogurt have granola today?" Her voice wasn't loud, but cold, measured. Inside that question lay the accusation. "You failed again." Erin stammered an apology, offered to run to Kroger right away. Sienna remained calm, but her words cut like a blade. "You always forget you're home all day and can't handle simple tasks?" Then she picked up a pristine white napkin and tossed it at Erin's face. She didn't need to throw it hard. That was a slap to his dignity. The napkin fell to the floor. Erin bent down, picked it up, folded it neatly. "I'm sorry. I'll do better." Sienna stood, scrolling through her phone as she issued orders. "Don't go outside." He makes her look bad. Hand wash, Monica's silk laundry. Scrub the upstairs toilet. The door slammed. Her Mercedes GLE engine roared in the driveway. Erin stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the closed door, then quietly washed the cup like a machine. In that instant, I understood. They hadn't just taken Erin's home. They were tearing pieces of his soul apart. One morning at a time, 6:45 to 7:15 a.m., Monica, Reggie, and Jalen. Monica came down next, silk pajamas, hair curled in rollers, diamond rings and bracelets, walking like someone raised to be served. Erin brought out the Eggs Benedict, trying desperately to make it perfect. She took one bite and declared the sauce too runny, told him to throw it away, switched to toast, and loudly told her friend on the phone, "Erin can't do anything right, but at least he knows how to scrub toilets." Reggie followed, golf polo, newspaper in hand. Erin brought him the oatmeal. Reggie didn't glance at him, didn't say thank you, finished eating, set the bowl down, walked out to the yard for golf. That silence said more than any insult. "You're not worth acknowledging." Then Jalen came downstairs, ran into Monica's arms, showered in kisses and praise. When Erin placed the carefully made sandwich in front of his son, Jalen said, "Daddy, bring me my sandwich. The butter isn't spread evenly. Mommy says you can't do anything right." A 5-year-old child, repeating perfectly the contempt he heard every day, watching my son rushing around serving his wife, his in-laws, and even his own son. The deepest pain wasn't how adults treated Erin. It was that a 5-year-old had been taught, a father is not a protector. A father is the person who brings the food. 7:30 a.m. I can't stay silent anymore. From the stair landing, I felt my blood boil. A level of fury my 62 years of life had never known I had seen enough. No, I had seen too much. Step by step, I descended the stairs and walked straight into the kitchen. The room froze. They had no idea I'd been awake since 4:45, witnessing everything. "Good morning," I said, my voice calm but heavy like thunder. Monica jolted, forced a smile. "Oh, Mr. Bennett, you're up early. Did you sleep well?" "I slept," I replied, eyes locked on hers. "But not peacefully." I looked at each of them in turn. Monica awkward, Reggie lowering his newspaper, Jalen wide-eyed with curiosity, and Erin shrinking into the corner, eyes wet, terrified that whatever I did next might make things worse for him. But if I stayed silent any longer, I didn't deserve to call myself his father. I recounted, clearly, precisely, everything I had seen. The 3-spoon coffee, the 4 perfect breakfasts, the napkin thrown on the floor, the silent contempt, the 5-year-old being taught to belittle his father. Then I turned to Erin, looked straight into his eyes. "Son, I'm here now, and I promise you, you will not endure one more day of this." Reggie threatened to call the police, insisting this was their home. I simply smiled. "Your home? Really? The house purchased 8 years ago is still under my name. This is my son's house, and the ones who should be leaving—" I paused, letting the words sink in, "are all of you." Silence swallowed the kitchen, and in that silence, on Erin's face, for the first time in 3 years, I saw something tiny but priceless: hope. That afternoon, after Sienna had gone to work and Monica and Reggie had driven off to Stone Mountain Golf Club for their usual round of golf, there was a knock at the door. I went to open it. Standing in front of me was a black woman in her early 50s, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, holding a tray of peach cobbler still steaming warm. "Hi, I'm Dana Coleman, your next-door neighbor," she smiled. "I heard you just came back from abroad?" "I'm Lorna Bennett," I replied, "Aaron's mother." Dana's eyes flickered, then she glanced past me into the house. Her voice dropped, as if she was afraid someone might hear. "Ms. Lorna, I have something important to tell you. May I come in?" We went into the kitchen. Dana set the tray down on the table, but didn't uncover it yet. She laced her fingers together, as if summoning all her courage, then lifted her head and looked straight into my eyes. "Ms. Lorna, I need to say this. I've watched your son suffer for far too long." My heart clenched. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dana exhaled deeply, like she was letting go of a weight that had been pressing on her chest for years. "I've been living next door for 7 years. I've known Aaron since he was single. He's a good man, always cheerful, always helping neighbors fix their computers, mow their lawns, carry heavy things." She paused, looking down at the coffee cup in front of her. "But ever since he married Sienna, things started to change." I leaned forward. "How did they change?" Dana began to speak, her voice even but slightly trembling, as if every detail she recalled stabbed her with guilt for having stayed silent so long. "At first I thought Aaron just liked staying home to take care of the baby, like a stay-at-home dad. I even told him he was doing great, but then I started to notice things. Every morning I'd see him up at 5. I walk my dog at 6, and when I look through the window, the kitchen light is already on. At 11 at night, many times that light is still on. He's still cleaning." She swallowed, then continued. "One time, I was walking my dog past the front yard. I heard Sienna yelling from the backyard. 'You embarrassed me in front of my friends. You can't do anything right.' Aaron just stood there, head down, didn't argue, didn't say a word, and I felt my heart break for him." Dana lifted a hand to wipe the corner of her eye, but the tears still fell. "Another time, I saw Monica, Sienna's mother, throw an entire load of clean laundry into Aaron's face. She yelled, 'Wash all of this again, it's not clean at all.' But believe me, I could see clearly from my side of the fence. Those clothes were spotless and fresh. She didn't need cleaner clothes. She just wanted to humiliate him." She stopped, took a deep breath, then went on, her voice tightening. "And Jalen, too. If you're listening to this and thinking, maybe Aaron's just sensitive, maybe this is just their private family conflict, then what happened next will show you this is no longer a normal marital issue. When a 5-year-old child starts repeating the cruel things he hears every day, this is no longer just the tragedy of a father. It is the tragedy of an entire next generation." Dana couldn't hold back anymore. Her tears were real now. "One day, I was standing in my yard, and I accidentally heard Jalen yelling at his father, 'You're useless! Mommy says you don't make any money.'" She looked at me, her gaze full of pain. "Ms. Lorna, when a 5-year-old says something like that, you know exactly who he learned it from." I sat still, my hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. I thought I had mentally prepared myself for the worst. But hearing it come from someone else's mouth still felt like someone was crushing my chest. "Why didn't you call the police?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "I thought about it," Dana admitted, "but I was scared. Scared that if I called them on my own, they'd take it out on Aaron. Scared that my interference would only make things worse for him." She looked at me, her eyes filled with hope and regret all at once. "But now you're back. You're his mother. You have a voice I don't have. Please, Miss Lorna, save your son. Do what I was too afraid to do." Dana still wasn't done. It was as if a knot inside her had finally loosened, and now everything was spilling out. There's one more thing. Once, I saw Aaron walking to the Kroger supermarket. And you know this, from here to Kroger is almost a 40-minute walk. I asked him, "Why aren't you driving? It's so hot out, and you're walking?" Aaron gave this awkward little smile and said, I'm not allowed to use the family car." Dana shook her head, angry on his behalf. "Not allowed? In his own home? Tell me, how is that normal?" She took her phone out of her pocket and opened her video gallery. "I recorded some things. At the time, I wasn't sure if I should, but something in my gut told me that one day this would be needed." She handed me the phone. On the screen, I saw Aaron hanging laundry out in the backyard. Shirts, slacks, towels, all neatly clipped in place. Sienna came out the back door, face twisted in annoyance. She yanked a dress shirt down so hard it nearly slapped Aaron in the face. "You hung this wrong." Sienna's voice rang out in the video. "Do it all over again." Aaron lowered his head. "I'm sorry." Sienna's voice sharpened. "Does sorry fix everything? You're useless all the time." The video ended with Aaron quietly picking the clothes up and hanging them again from the beginning, shoulders sagging. As I watched, I could feel my blood boiling in waves. "If you need evidence for court, for a lawyer," Dana said, her voice now firm, "I have more videos like this, and I'm willing to testify." I turned to look at the woman sitting beside me, a neighbor, an outsider, yet the only witness brave enough to truly look at what was happening. I couldn't hold back anymore. I stood up and wrapped my arms tightly around her. "Thank you." My voice broke. "Thank you for not turning your back on my son." In that moment, I understood something. I was not alone, and Sienna's family, Monica, Reggie, had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They had allowed far too many people to see what they did in the dark, and now, that darkness was about to be dragged into the light. That night, after the whole house had gone quiet, only the hum of the air conditioner and the distant traffic on Decatur's roads remained, Aaron and I sat together in his room. The door closed, a soft yellow lamp glowing, and on the bed lay the thick manila folder Aaron had secretly kept for 3 years. I took a deep breath and opened it. With every page I turned, the truth became clearer. This wasn't just family injustice. This was a systematic crime. Medical records. March of that year. Right on the first page was the Emory Healthcare logo, notes, handwritten by psychiatrist Patricia Morrison. Patient, Aaron Michael Bennett, age 31, diagnosis, severe postpartum depression. Prescribed, sertraline, maximum dose, plus lorazepam, plus quetiapine. I wasn't a doctor, but I didn't need to be. Those were heavy medications, the kind that make a person foggy, disoriented, too unclear-headed to fully understand what's happening. I turned the page. Under the section for dated notes, one line from Dr. Morrison stabbed straight into my eyes. March 15th. Increased dosage to maximum levels due to patient showing suicidal ideation. Patient is not capable of making decisions. Should not sign any legal documents. I read it once, then again, and again. Should not sign any legal documents. Should not sign anything. I slowly lifted my eyes to Aaron. He sat there with his hands clasped, eyes red. I turned to the next section, and my heart dropped. The house transfer contract date signed March 15th. The same day, the psychiatrist explicitly recorded that Aaron had no legal capacity and must not sign any legal papers. "Son," I tried to keep my voice steady. "Do you remember anything about signing these?" Aaron shook his head, tears spilling. "I don't remember, Dad," he whispered. "That time, it felt like living in a fog. I just remember they kept bringing me papers and saying, 'Sign here. This is for treatment. This is for insurance.' I signed everything." He swallowed hard. "I trusted them, Dad. I thought they were helping me." I pulled my son into my arms. We cried. Not loud sobs, but the quiet kind that crush the throat, equal parts grief and rage. But strangely, beneath the fury, a glimmer of something else formed inside me. Hope. Because if Aaron signed these documents while on maximum medication, with a doctor's note confirming his lack of legal capacity, then those documents, under the law, mean nothing. They are void. If you're listening and thinking, this is just a private family dispute, hard to prove anything, then the next part will show you. Sometimes the cruelest people expose themselves. With their own emails and messages, the medical files were only half the picture. The other half was hidden inside the words they thought no one else would ever read. Emails and messages, their own confessions. I flipped to the next section. Printed emails. Ones Aaron had recovered from an old laptop Sienna forgot to wipe clean. An email from Sienna to her parents. Mom, Dad, Aaron signed everything. The house is now in our names. He has no idea. The meds make him so compliant. We won. I read each line. Every word burned. He has no idea. They knew Aaron wasn't mentally stable. They knew the medication made him obedient. They deliberately exploited that state to get what they wanted. My blood chilled. I turned to the next page. A printed text message from Monica to Sienna. Sienna, honey, remember to keep him working hard. He's living rent-free. He needs to be grateful. If he pushes back, remind him we can take Jalen away. Remind him we can take Jalen away. That wasn't a mother-in-law speaking. That was someone holding a hostage. I grabbed my phone and began photographing everything. Every email, every text, every medical note. These were no longer papers. These were evidence proof. They exploited a mentally ill man, stole his property, and turned my son into a servant in his own home. The record book. Their private prison log. Aaron, I said quietly, you mentioned before they had some kind of notebook? He nodded. Dad, they also have a notebook. What kind of notebook? They call it the record book, like a log. They wrote down everything I did wrong, even the smallest thing, and every time they'd say, you owe this family more. You need to work harder to repay your debt. Aaron opened a drawer and pulled out an old blue notebook with worn corners. He handed it to me, like handing over a weapon used against him. I opened the first page. Page 1. April 5th. Aaron washed dishes slowly. Took 45 minutes instead of 30. Punishment, no dinner. April 5th. Slow dishes. Punishment, no dinner. I turned the page. Page 2. April 12th. Aaron forgot to buy milk. Punishment, sleep in living room, not allowed in bedroom. Forgot to buy milk. Punishment, sleep outside. Next page. Next. Page 3. April 20th. Aaron talked back when mother criticized him. Punishment, no contact with Jalen for 3 days. Spoke up. Punishment, lose access to his own child. I turned more pages. Each one was another offense. Washed dishes the wrong way. Vacuumed too slowly. Forgot to fold towels. Monica's preferred way. Bought the wrong bread. Made too much noise during Monica's nap. And every mistake had a punishment. No food, no bedroom, no talking, no sleep, no Jalen work through the night. I sat there with the notebook open, feeling like I was holding a disciplinary log from a prison, not a family home. This wasn't a family. This was a private jail built on rules, fear, and isolation. I closed the notebook and looked directly into Aaron's eyes. I'm going to end this, I said, every word sharp and steady. Dad promises you they will pay for every line in this notebook, for every document they forced you to sign, for every tear you and Jalen swallowed. Aaron looked at me, tears spilling again. But this time, beneath the pain, I saw something new. Trust. And that night, I knew. Starting tomorrow, Sienna's family would no longer be the ones writing the rules. They would be the ones reading the charges. The next morning, I opened my laptop and typed in a phrase I should have searched for a long time ago. Elder abuse attorney, Atlanta, Georgia. The first name that appeared, Caroline Webb and Associates, specialists in elder abuse and exploitation cases. Their office was in downtown Atlanta, on the 15th floor of a sleek glass building overlooking Piedmont Park. I read the reviews. Attorney Webb helped me escape an abusive marriage. She's not just a lawyer, she's a warrior. Client M.N. Caroline Webb has a reputation for never losing in abuse cases. She takes down even the most powerful families. Atlanta Legal Review. I didn't need to read more. I called immediately. Webb and Associates, how may I help you? I didn't beat around the bush. I need to see Attorney Webb. This is very urgent. The voice on the line asked, "Can you briefly describe the issue, sir?" I suspect my son is being kept under coercive control and exploited for labor inside his own home. His in-laws forced him to sign over his house while he was being treated for postpartum depression and was legally incapacitated. There was a short silence on the other end. Then the tone shifted, sharper, more serious. "Please hold. I'll transfer you to Ms. Webb immediately." About 30 seconds later, a low, confident female voice, full of authority, came on the line. "This is Caroline Webb. Tell me everything." Her office looked like a war room, elegant, dark, and severe. Black wood furniture, shelves packed with legal files, a large glass window overlooking a sun-drenched Atlanta skyline. Caroline Webb, around 50, gray hair pulled neatly back, eyes sharp like a surgeon's scalpel, stood up to shake my hand. She wore a black suit, a white shirt, and held a Mont Blanc pen like she was ready to sign a death sentence. "Mr. Bennett, sit down. Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single detail." I told her everything. From the moment I opened the front door of the house, to the humiliating apron, the bruises, the medical records, the emails, the messages, the punishment notebook, and Dana, the neighbor's testimony. Caroline listened while writing nonstop on yellow legal pads. Anything important she circled in red. Anything that needed corroboration, she marked with an X. From time to time, she looked up to ask, "Exact dates? Witnesses? What does your son remember? Does the neighbor have evidence?" When I finished, she put her pen down, leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and her eyes lit up with a dangerous kind of energy. "Mr. Bennett," she said slowly, "this is a textbook case of exploitation of a vulnerable adult. What the Hamilton family has done isn't just despicable, it's a federal crime." She laid Aaron's medical records out on the desk, side by side with the house transfer papers. "Look at this timeline. March 15th, the doctor writes clearly, patient is not capable of making decisions, should not sign any legal documents. Also, March 15th, your severely depressed son signs over a $400,000 house." Caroline gave a short, cold laugh. "Any first-year law student could get these documents thrown out." If you're thinking, so what if the contract is void? The Hamiltons still have power. The next moment will show you they didn't just cross a line. They walked straight into one of the heaviest crimes in federal law. Caroline placed a hand on the desk, leaned forward, her voice dropping. "But what makes this case particularly serious is this." She tapped her fingers on the punishment notebook. "They didn't just deceive him. They didn't just force signatures. They set up a long-term forced labor system based on threats, financial control, and psychological domination." She looked me dead in the eye. "Mr. Bennett, this is human trafficking, domestic human trafficking, by the FBI's definition." My blood ran cold. "Human trafficking?" "Yes," Caroline nodded. "When someone is forced to perform unpaid labor, is isolated, threatened with losing their child, financially controlled, monitored through a punishment log, under federal law, that is trafficking." She opened her computer, pulled up a template document, and began writing a battle plan as if preparing a military operation. Step 1. A 48-hour ultimatum. We will send the Hamilton family a demand letter requiring them to return the house to Aaron, pay $1 million in compensation for 3 years of forced labor and emotional distress, issue a public apology. Caroline looked at me. If they're smart, they'll sign immediately. Step 2. If they refuse, civil and criminal simultaneously. Civil. We sue to get the house back plus damages. Criminal. We hand the file to the FBI for human trafficking, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and property fraud. Step 3. Media pressure. We'll contact the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, WSB-TV, and investigative reporters. This family cares about their social reputation. Public pressure will crush them. Step 4. If necessary, total destruction. Freeze assets, prison time, massive civil damages, end Sienna's legal career, collapse the entire family's standing. Caroline laced her fingers together and smiled, a smile as cold as a blade. But this time, that blade was pointed at them, not at us. Mr. Bennett, I've been doing this for 25 years. I have never seen a case where the evidence is this clear, this extensive, and this cruel. The Hamilton family picked the wrong person to bully. They didn't realize that behind Aaron stands Lorna Bennett. I asked, "So what's the first step?" "Tomorrow." Caroline stood up and extended her hand. "You and I are going to see them. We'll give them a chance to surrender." She gripped my hand firmly, the handshake of a soldier heading into battle. If they're wise, they'll kneel. If they're foolish, her eyes gleamed like heated steel. We'll teach them what it means to declare war on the Bennett family. I walked out of that office with a feeling I hadn't known in years. Power. And I knew, as soon as tomorrow morning, the Hamiltons would learn that. Their biggest mistake was not abusing Aaron. Their biggest mistake was abusing Aaron while his father was still alive and ready to fight to his very last breath. The next morning, Caroline and I drove to Buckhead, the kind of neighborhood where simply looking at the real estate listings tells you everything. This place was built on money, power, and generations of inherited arrogance. The Hamilton estate rose 3 stories high, built in full Southern colonial style, with tall white columns reaching upward like a declaration that this house was untouchable. The gardens were perfectly trimmed by a professional crew. Every stone in the driveway seemed to whisper the same question: whose back paid for all of this? A housekeeper led us down a cold marble hallway. On both sides, oil portraits of Hamilton ancestors stared down at us, eyes trained by generations of power, unused to the word no. We stepped into a deep cherrywood office. William Hamilton, Aaron's father-in-law, sat behind a massive desk. He was in his 70s, hair slicked back, a round face belonging to a man who inherited wealth rather than earned it. And the part that made me want to punch him, he didn't bother standing up. "Mr. Bennett," William said, his voice thick with superiority, "I hear you're concerned about your son's living situation. Aaron is very happy working for our family. The boy is well taken care of." Working, not living with his wife and child, not being part of the family, but working for our family. I clenched my fists. Working? You call turning my son into an unpaid servant in his own home working? William smirked, lifting his chin like he was looking at someone beneath him. "You are nobody, Bennett. My family has controlled this city for 4 generations. We have judges, politicians, police. You think an old man with gray hair can threaten us?" Caroline stepped forward and dropped a thick file onto his desk, like placing a bomb whose fuse was already lit. "Mr. Hamilton, I'm attorney Caroline Webb. This is Aaron's medical file from Emory Healthcare, along with his psychiatrist's notes." She opened the documents, her voice sharp as steel. On March 15th, Aaron signed over his house while on maximum psychiatric medication. Dr. Patricia Morrison clearly wrote, Patient is not capable of making decisions, should not sign any legal documents. I saw William's eye twitch, the first crack in his confidence. Aaron signed voluntarily, he argued, louder now. We have witnesses. Voluntarily? I leaned forward. You exploited a mentally ill man. That's a federal crime. Exploitation of a vulnerable adult, property fraud, and forced labor. Caroline continued, cold and controlled. You think we don't know about the apron labeled Hamilton family property? Or the threats your son made against Aaron? All of it is in our file. William's face reddened. How dare you barge into my home and make these accusations? I'll have you both arrested for harassment. Please do, Caroline replied calmly. Polk County Jail loves domestic trafficking cases. I'm sure they'll be very interested. Just then, Huxley Hamilton, William's son, burst in like an enraged bull. Dad, why are you talking to them? Let me handle it. We always handle our problems. A direct threat. And Caroline accepted it like a gift. If you're thinking, the Hamiltons are powerful, they aren't scared. What happened next will show you. Oh, they're scared. Deeply. Desperately. Caroline turned back to William, her voice precise. You have 48 hours to return the house to Aaron. Pay $1 million for 3 years of forced labor and emotional damage. Issue a public apology. She paused exactly long enough for the words to cut. If not, we file civil and criminal charges with the FBI. William shot to his feet, face blood red, hands shaking with rage. Bennett, you and your pathetic son just picked a fight with the wrong family. We will destroy you. I stood too, meeting the eyes of the man who ruined my son's life. You already tried, but you made one fatal mistake. You let me live, and I'm here to fight. As we walked out of the mansion, Caroline gently squeezed my arm, her eyes glowing like she'd just gathered new ammunition. Perfect, she said. They threatened you in front of a witness. We now have charges for intimidation and coercion. 48 hours. That was all the time the Hamiltons had left before their empire began to crumble. And I knew, after what I saw today, their arrogance would make them refuse the offer. Exactly what I needed. 47 hours passed, and the absolute silence from the Hamilton family was all the answer Caroline needed. It wasn't that they hadn't seen the ultimatum, it was that they were too arrogant to respond. Early Monday morning, the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution exploded with a headline that cut straight through the city. Buckhead family exploited son-in-law's mental illness to seize his home. The investigative report by journalist Maria Santos was razor-sharp, relentless. Every detail laid out with precision. Aaron's medical records, the suspicious timing of the signatures, the humiliating conditions he endured for 3 long years. The image accompanying the article stabbed me right in the chest. Our small Decatur home placed beside the Hamiltons' enormous Buckhead mansion, a modern-day portrait of David versus Goliath. Within hours, the story spread everywhere. The hashtag Justice for Aaron erupted across Twitter. Thousands shared their own stories of family abuse, financial control, stolen freedom. A wave of outrage and solidarity surged through the city. By afternoon, Dana, my neighbor, knocked on my door, holding a pot of steaming chicken and dumplings, her eyes red. Mr. Bennett, I had no idea Aaron was being hurt this badly. The whole neighborhood's talking. Everyone wants to help. And the support rushed in like a flood. A GoFundMe appeared overnight, raising $50,000 for legal costs. The Atlanta Women's Shelter reached out, offering free therapy for Aaron. Strangers stopped me in Ponce City Market just to say they were standing with us. I had never seen this city unite like this. But if you think all of that was powerful on its own, just wait for the moment the courthouse made its ruling, because that was when the scales of justice finally, and decisively, tilted in our favor. Around 2 p.m., my phone rang. Caroline's voice came through, crisp and electric. "Lorna, Come to the courthouse. Judge Elizabeth Barnes just signed an emergency order. Aaron is getting his home back today." I drove straight there. Inside the DeKalb County Courthouse, the courtroom was packed. Judge Barnes's voice rang out, strong, unwavering. "Based on medical evidence, the court finds that Mr. Aaron Michael Bennett did not have legal capacity to sign these documents. The property transfer is hereby voided immediately." The Hamiltons' attorney turned white as chalk. William Hamilton flushed purple with rage, while Huxley had to be restrained by courthouse security when he began shouting threats. Judge Barnes continued, "A temporary restraining order is issued. The Hamilton family is prohibited from contacting or approaching Mr. Bennett or his household. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." 2 hours later, I stood on the porch of our Decatur home, watching DeKalb County deputies escort Aaron and Jalen back inside. The home that should have been theirs all along. Aaron carried one small suitcase, 3 years with the Hamiltons, and that was all they let him leave with. Jalen clutched his worn teddy bear, eyes wide as he crossed the wooden threshold beneath the old oak trees standing guard like silent soldiers. "Daddy," he whispered, "are we really living here now?" "Yes, buddy," Aaron said, his voice cracking. "We're home. We finally get to be home." That evening, we ate Dana's chicken and dumplings around the kitchen table, the heart of the house, and for the first time in years, I felt peace settling over us. But then the phone rang. Caller ID, Huxley. Caroline motioned with her hand. "Put it on speaker. I'm recording. Let's see how stupid he is." I answered. Huxley's voice oozed through the receiver, slurred, hateful, drunk. "This isn't over, old man. You think you've won? We're going to destroy every one of you. Very soon, you'll wish you never came back from London." The call ended with a hard click. Caroline stopped the recording, a blade-sharp smile curving her lips. "Congratulations, Lorna. He just gifted us another criminal charge." That night, as Aaron tucked Jalen into his own bed, for the first time in 3 years, I felt something I hadn't dared feel since the day I walked into that house and saw that humiliating apron. Hope real, clear, warm. But Huxley's threat still echoed in the back of my mind. We had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. 6 months later, I sat inside the DeKalb County Courthouse, watching Judge Elizabeth Barnes deliver the final chapter of our story. The courtroom was packed with people who had followed the case from the very beginning. Huxley sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his former arrogance replaced by the hollow stare of a man completely broken. "Mr. Huxley Hamilton," Judge Barnes declared, her voice carrying absolute authority, "you are found guilty of domestic violence, fraud, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and conspiracy to commit human trafficking. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole." Her gavel struck the bench, a thunderous sound of righteous justice. 2 weeks earlier, William Hamilton had received 8 years for abuse and fraud. Monica was sentenced to 5. The Hamilton empire collapsed overnight. Assets frozen, the Buckhead mansion seized, and their once prestigious family name becoming a stain across Atlanta. Caroline squeezed my hand. "It's done, Lorna. They can't hurt anyone anymore." The court-ordered restitution totaled $2 million. To pay what they owed, the Hamiltons were forced to liquidate everything. The mansion, the Mercedes, the BMWs, their business assets. We used the money to rebuild our lives from the ground up. The Decatur home was fully renovated, larger windows, a modern kitchen, and a spacious bedroom where I moved my belongings from London because I wasn't going anywhere anymore. "Mom," Aaron said when I told him I was staying in Atlanta for good, "are you sure? You worked so hard in London." "My life was never in London," I replied. "My life is where my family is." The best part was the backyard playground we built for Jalen. Swings, a slide, a sandbox. Every evening, I pushed him on the swings while Aaron tended his azaleas and dogwoods. "Higher, Grandma, higher!" Jalen laughed, his voice ringing across the Decatur neighborhood. At 6 years old, he had grown into a confident, joyful child, secure in the knowledge that he was loved and protected. He called me Grandma as naturally as breathing and insisted I read The Brave Little Mouse to him every night. Aaron blossomed too. The haunted look that once clung to him had vanished, replaced with the steady warmth of the strong man I raised. He enrolled in evening classes at Georgia State University to earn a degree in social work. "I want to help other men who went through what I did," he told me, "to show them that there's always hope." Tonight, as I pushed Jalen on the swing beneath the starry Georgia sky, Aaron stepped onto the porch carrying 3 glasses of Southern sweet tea. He sat on the steps, watching us with a smile that glowed. "Grandma," Jalen said, slowing the swing so he could look at me seriously, "you're going to live with us forever, right?" I stopped the swing gently, knelt down to meet his eyes, the same warm brown as his father's. "Forever, my love. Nothing could ever take me away." "Mom," Aaron called from the porch, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for never giving up." As the sun slipped behind the old Georgia oaks and Jalen ran off to catch fireflies, I realized something. This simple, perfect evening, this ordinary moment, was worth more than all the success I had ever chased in London. Looking back on this journey, I understood how close I came to losing everything that truly mattered. 8 years spent pursuing stability overseas, while my son suffered in silence. Don't make my mistake. Don't let ambition blind you to the quiet suffering inside your own home. This true story taught me something vital. God has a way of bringing us back exactly when we're needed most. I believe He brought me home to Atlanta in the precise moment Aaron needed saving. Just as He guides all of us through our darkest hours, the Hamiltons thought they could exploit a vulnerable man without consequences. But they forgot that justice has a way of finding its path. Aaron's strength over those 3 terrible years showed me that faith can carry us through unthinkable hardship. These grandmother stories aren't just about my experiences. They're about the unbreakable power of family bonds. If you're working far from home, remember, no amount of money can replace the moments you miss with your children and grandchildren. Success means nothing if your family is suffering. This true story could have ended very differently if I'd come home even a few weeks later. The greatest blessing wasn't the courtroom victory or even the new home. It was the way Jalen said Grandma, with pure, honest love. That's why I share these grandmother stories, to inspire others to choose what truly matters. Don't wait for a crisis to come home. Don't assume your loved ones are okay just because they don't complain. And never underestimate the power of a parent's love when their child needs them. This true story changed all our lives forever. Aaron found his strength again. Jalen learned he is safe and protected. And I discovered that home isn't a place. It's the people who love you without conditions. If this story touched your heart, share your own family experiences in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that honor the unbreakable bonds of family. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.